Sometimes in history, a single event can feel like a stress test for an entire nation. In the 1970s, India had one of those moments, a massive constitutional battle that pitted a powerful prime minister against the highest court in the land. This is the story of how one election dispute almost broke a democracy.
And it all boils down to this one absolutely incredible question. Can the people who make the laws reach back in time and change those laws just to save one single person's election? Even if that person is the prime minister, that's the core question we're going to dig into.
So, where did this all begin? Well, like a lot of political dramas, it starts at the ballot box. We're in 1971. It's a general election in India. The stakes are sky high, but in one specific race, a fight is starting that will have consequences no one, and I mean no one, could have seen coming. Let's meet our two main players. On one side, you have Indira Gandhi. She's the sitting prime minister, an absolute giant in Indian politics. And on the other side is Raj Narain, a really determined socialist leader who just would not quit. So Gandhi wins the election in her district, but Narain doesn't just concede. Nope, he takes her to court. And this wasn't just sour grapes. Narain filed a formal petition with a whole list of specific accusations. Under India's election law, these were called corrupt practices. He claimed she used government staff for her campaign, that the state literally built her rally stages, and that she blew past the legal spending limit. A sitting prime minister's election was now officially on trial. So the case slowly makes its way to the Allahabad High Court. And for 4 long years, they hear evidence, they call witnesses, they even called the prime minister herself to testify, which was totally unprecedented. The entire country is just holding its breath. And then, in June of 1975, the decision finally drops. Invalidated. Just one word, but that one word sent an earthquake through India. The court had actually done the unthinkable. I mean, the scale of this verdict was just staggering. The High Court didn't just slap her on the wrist. They declared her entire election void. They found her guilty of misusing government machinery. And a punishment? She was banned from holding any elected office for 6 years. A sitting prime minister was just unseated by a court. A massive political crisis had just kicked off. But here's the thing. This story is far from over. Because when the courts make a move, the lawmakers can make a move of their own. And what happened next was one of the boldest, most audacious legal plays in modern history. So what was the government's weapon of choice? A constitutional amendment. Now, this isn't just passing some regular law. We're talking about changing the foundational document of the entire country. To do that in India, you need a supermajority in parliament, and, well, Indira Gandhi's government had the votes to do it. To fight the court's verdict, they passed something called the 39th Amendment. Just look at this text. It basically says that all the old election laws, they just don't apply. And in fact, they never applied to the prime minister's election. It's like building a legal time machine to go back and erase the very rules she was found guilty of breaking. Let's put that in plain English. Parliament wasn't asking for a do-over. It was making a declaration. It passed an amendment that basically said, hey, that high court judgment, totally irrelevant. The law it used doesn't apply to this one case. The election is valid. The end. And of course, this sets up the ultimate constitutional showdown. The whole thing, including a challenge to this brand new amendment, goes all the way up to the Supreme Court of India. So the question isn't just about one election anymore. It's about who gets the final say in a democracy, the elected parliament or the constitution itself. Now, Raj Narayan's challenge was built on this really powerful legal idea called the basic structure doctrine. Think of it this way. The doctrine says Parliament can renovate the House, it can amend the Constitution, but it can't knock down the foundation walls. It can't destroy the core features like democracy, the rule of law, or the separation of powers. Now, to really get what the court was thinking here, you have to understand a really basic difference. Legislative power, making laws, is all about the future. It's creating new general rules for everybody. Judicial power is about the past. It's looking at a specific fight that already happened and applying the rules that existed at that time to decide who wins. So the real question for the Supreme Court was a deep one. Was this 39th Amendment a new rule for the future? Or was it Parliament basically putting on a judge's robe, reaching into a past fight and just overturning the verdict itself? Was this a law, or was it a judgment in disguise? This question, had Parliament crossed that line from making law to passing judgment? That was everything. The entire case, the entire crisis, it all hung on what the Supreme Court would decide.
And the verdict? Well, it came with a twist that I don't think anyone saw coming. The Supreme Court struck down that controversial part of the 39th Amendment. They called it unconstitutional, a huge win for the rule of law. But in the very same ruling, it upheld Indira Gandhi's election as valid. Wait, what? How is that even possible?
Okay, stick with me, because here's how they threaded that needle. The court said, look, that part of the amendment was a legislative judgment. Parliament was trying to be a court, and that violates the basic structure of the Constitution. So that's gone. However, Parliament had also passed some other, separate changes to the general election laws. For instance, they made it clear that a prime minister's security detail couldn't be counted as a campaign expense. The court said those general law changes were perfectly valid. So, when the court took these new, valid laws and applied them back to the original case, the charges against Indira Gandhi basically just melted away. The whole legal reason for invalidating her election was just gone. So, while the immediate political result went the prime minister's way, the long-term legal principle was a massive victory for democracy. The Supreme Court stared down Parliament and the executive branch and basically said, you can change the law for the future, but you cannot act as a court for the past. It sent a crystal clear message. In India, the Constitution is supreme and nobody is above the law. And that leaves us with a question that echoes in democracies all over the world, even today. This whole case was an incredible stress test. It revealed that constant tension between what the majority wants right now and the timeless principles of law that are meant to protect the system itself. And it forces all of us to ask, where do you draw that line? And who gets to be the one to draw it?